Right. So we are live. I'd like to introduce myself and my friend Jeremy here. I'm Daren Mell, president of Voice of the Voiceless. We are a nonprofit. Our mission is to defend the rights of former homosexuals, individuals, and those with individuals with unwanted same-sex attraction in their families. And then I have my friend Jeremy Schwab, who's been a board member of Voice of the Voiceless and a good friend. And he is the executive director and I believe founder of Joel 225, Joel 225 International. And so we confirmed that in my last video, we went through the list of the global extremism. And so I will share my screen here. And Jeremy, you're going to hear yourself double echoed here when I share my screen. So just if we get feedback, mute yourself just for a minute and we'll see how this works. They warned me about that when you have a person in the green room. All right. So what we're going to talk about, Jeremy, is a couple things or whatever comes to mind. But of course, we're talking about censorship of the ex-gay community. And I believe you can see this. This is a report that the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism came up with. And what they have is a list of all the quote unquote conversion therapy players. Okay. And so it's not just ministries that work in this space, but also people that I would say would be our allies, right? So we got the Alliance for Therapeutic Choice and Scientific Integrity. And so if we open up this, are these people saying to go after? Well, this is a private group, and I've spoken to people in that group, and this group has been deleted. They're also going after PayPal, Amazon Smile. They're going after the websites. And so Joel here, he's Joel 225 International, great ministry. I'd recommend it. And here his group on Facebook is gone. So Jeremy, you're gone. Let's see, I'll add you back to the stream here. So Jeremy's gone and yeah, here we go. So Jeremy, go ahead and see it.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I'm surprised actually. I'm not surprised, I guess, but it's interesting that I've never seen them disorganized as far as actually placing a hit list on where to go after us and how to try to take us down on every platform. It seems like they're not wanting to engage or discuss anything with us. They just want us silenced and unable to talk.
Yep. And I can confirm that Livingstone Ministries is down. This is our friend Denise and her ministry.
Yeah.
Their page is down. Help for Families is down. Or I'm sorry, that's their website. That's not down. Thank goodness.
Yeah, anyway, I'm supposed to.
Yeah. So let's open up the Facebook page. Yep. So they're down.
Wow.
And I went through the list and Desert Streams is gone.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Desert Stream's been in the ministry for Andy, for 30 years.
Yeah.
Wasn't it in 2017 and gave him an award for ministry for being in the ministry for 30 years? Yeah. Yep. Pure Passion TV is gone. David Paul Foster.
Really?
Wow. Yeah, all of his stuff is now on Facebook. So
they won't just stop with Facebook. I mean, in Europe, actually, last time I was in Britain, I met with a friend who's part of a group there similar to ours, and he said that they weren't even allowed to have a bank account. Like,
oh yes. Okay, Barclays.
Yeah, exactly.
And Christian Concern.
Yes, exactly. Christian Concern.
Michael.
Yeah.
Ministry that helps people. Okay, here it is.
Yeah.
So ministry that helps people with unwanted same-sex attraction sues Barclay over account closure. Yep. And that was, if we were to go back, let's see. Yeah. So a gay activist, get this. So a 501c3 or the equivalent. I followed this story.
Yeah.
So these two gay guys create a nonprofit organization, and within 3 months they get like $1 million.
Wow.
Okay, and their first target is Michael. And so they told Barclays, hey, Barclays, you say that you support the LGBT community, but yet you have Mike Davidson over here. And so they shut him down. So Barclays just says, we're going to shut your account down.
Yeah.
And he's a minister, or he's a therapist, a Christian, right?
Yeah, there's no discussion about what the reason is. I mean, I even tried to share this with a allegedly Christian Facebook group earlier, and all I got was, of course, outrage that I was doing conversion therapy. And it was like, wait a minute, you don't even know what you're talking about. And then the other pushback was, well, these are private companies. You can't tell them what to do.
Yeah.
But it's not really these companies are doing it. I mean, obviously these companies are doing it, but they're only doing it because these groups are pushing it. Like these groups can literally tell them, this person offended me, delete their account. And there's no discussion, no, questioning that accusation. It's just a blind accusation and you're immediately guilty.
Yep. And that you don't get to defend yourself. You don't anything. It's just, the LGBT lobby has labeled you. Well, we're friends with them. So goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this was last year, right? When that happened. Actually, it was sooner than that. July. Let's see, this is July. Yeah. So it's what they do to us as Christians is what they want to do with Christianity in general.
Yeah.
When it comes to, well, I'm not going to show pink news. That would probably have people. What they're doing to our ministry area is what they want to do to Christianity in general.
Yeah, exactly.
We just happen to be the canary in the mine of Christian persecution. And so, what did you see what happened this past, not this weekend, but the Sunday before with C4, and then it was John MacArthur.
Yes.
Right. And so he asked thousands of churches to raise the alarm about conversion therapy ban. Right.
Yep.
So here's an article. And conversion therapy in Canada has done what happened in Australia. Yeah. They banned the Christian ministry as well.
Yeah.
And so it's not just, you can have your freedom of religion. In Victoria, our peers had to shut down. Did you have to shut down? Did you have Joel 225 in Australia?
We do, and it's still there, but we don't have a legal entity set up in Australia, so we do it all through.
So you're doing it through HQ.
Yeah, pretty much. Our non-disclosed location.
Yeah. So how do you handle that? Because you've got ministry going on in there. Is it just Zoom, or do you have people on the street helping out?
We've got a little of both in a lot of different places. I was going to ask you, how do you handle it, to see if you had any advice?
Yeah. Well, I've met with several people in areas where it's illegal to do ministry, and we talked about how to do referrals and the necessity for protection of individuals, and being a security expert and security consultant. We talked about security versus secrecy, privacy versus secrecy, and what it takes to build an underground church.
Yeah.
So, I can have a website that Australians can contact me at, but then how do I protect the ministers in Australia when I refer people for hands-on, prayer and fellowship and what have you?
Sure. Yeah.
Because in Australia, it's Australia. Oops. So there, this is 10 years and $100,000 if you do that. And so this is a real deal. And the lawyers of our peers told them that you need to shut down, that you can't do this anymore, that they did target the Christians.
Yeah.
And so, if we could talk offline about what it is to have freedom.
Yeah.
And how to do that. So, yeah. And, Canada just did it. And so I appreciate John MacArthur blowing the whistle here, because it's on this side of the world. Exactly. But Australia, this happened in 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been happening.
I know.
the censorship isn't new. We've experienced it, with the petition.
Sure.
That was September 2019, right?
Exactly.
And look at this. They've got 149,000 signatures to ban our books.
Wow.
And then
how many of those 149,000 ever read any of these books?
No, exactly. No, it doesn't matter. It's tribal, and so yeah, you got one gay guy who didn't read the books, just petition, and
exactly.
So we got 20,000 signatures. Remember when we put this together?
I know, yeah, exactly.
And what just killed me was people were saying, "Oh, we gave money to your cause. We gave money to your cause," and Voice of Voiceless didn't see a dime.
I know. Yeah.
Change.org probably got $1,000
at least
for our petition.
I know.
I was like, stop giving. It's going to change. It's not coming to us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But, okay. So the original petition, and we got to take a moment here and point out that they had gone back and added this book by Marie Davidson that I have my testimony in. And this is just a faith-based perspective. So it's written from a Christian perspective, reviewing the research, and then several testimonies. I don't know, was your testimony in there? Do you know?
I don't believe so, but I do have the book actually.
So I know like Susan's testimony, my testimony, several other people that we know is in that book. And so that's just a faith-based book.
Yeah.
And of course you got the conflating of therapy and faith practice as anything that they want, they throw into conversion therapy.
Yeah. And it's they mix. I mean, even when they say therapy, I mean the therapy that we do is the same modality of therapy that you'd get anywhere. It's the differences of values of the client and the individual. It's not, they want to tie it to, some kind of torture practice or things like that, which are already illegal everywhere and have been for decades. And has nothing to do with what we do, but that's what they want to. That's what they have people convinced that they're actually, is referred to as conversion therapy.
Yeah. And, part of my journey and how I ended up at Voice the Voiceless was Jesus set me free of same-sex attraction. I wasn't going through any program. I didn't even know that ex-gays existed.
Yeah.
Okay. I just had a brother, a staff pastor at church, and my wife just supporting me and, believing in prayer. And then I reached out. I'm like, well, if I'm not gay, what am I? I'm ex-gay, So I Googled ex-gays and I found PFOX and Voice of the Voiceless. I don't remember if you remember this, but in 2015, and I emailed both organizations, and Christopher Doyle got back to me, and the board, several board members met with me, and we talked about, my life experience, and then, they're like, well, why don't you come on and be on the board? And then I helped with the website, right?
Yeah.
And then in 2017, when Robin went over to work therapy quality with David and Christopher and that team, Laura and them, Robin stepped down to go focus on that. And then that's when I took over as president. Yeah. Well, part of this, my journey included you guys introducing me to this book. Not that I needed to go through therapy, but I bought it. Or I'm sorry, this book, Shame and Attachment Loss. And my wife and I actually read it together.
Great.
And Jeremy, we're reading, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a textbook case. Like he's describing, the things that his clients, the patterns that he sees. I'm like, that happened to me, that happened to me, that happened to me. And, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
And of course they removed this book. Now, I've heard that there was an audiobook that was being made for this book, right?
Yeah.
For Shame and Attachment Loss. But yet that book never materialized because they banned it, right?
Well, I finished it, and it was on Audible actually for a brief period of time before they found it and banned it. And so there are a lot of people who have copies of it that way. And then I believe it's available online through Dr. Nicolosi Jr.'s website now.
Okay. Yeah. And I just wanted to throw that out if you would admit to being the one who recorded it.
Oh, yeah, of course. I worked hard on that. I don't mind.
Yeah, I know. You worked really hard on it. And I appreciated the preview.
It's like that.
And
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is his modality, and just talking about his experiences with it. And then here's the crazy thing, and what I observed in this censorship, and it's totally the conflation.
Yep.
This book by Anne is a Christian discipleship book and a testimony book. It's literally her testimony.
Yeah.
And then her Christian perspective on scriptures and how Jesus works in our lives. And
Exactly.
and so they're banning Christian testimony book. This is literally a Christian message.
Exactly.
So they're banning it because of that religious belief.
Yeah, there's nothing in there even about therapy in that part. I mean
yeah, this has nothing to do with therapy. This is just
it's an individual person's story, and that's somehow offensive. But there's no discussion. You can't tell.
Just to take a side thing, this is after I testified at the United Nations, and so did Ann and Mike. Media Matters came out with this article and asked Facebook to delete us. Wow. And Facebook deleted Ann's page with Restored Hope and Mike's page, but we got under the radar somehow. And what is really unfortunate is well, I'm not going to go click through this, but one of their links is a eulogy that Andrew Rodriguez had done for Cy Rogers, and they considered that conversion therapy. And then it's this first one. You can open up this first one. So this first one is a book that my friend Ronald wrote. And so all I did was share this Christian Post article. It's Is God Who He Says He Is? And it's a great book. I actually did a video. One of the links they clicked, and Facebook has since removed my video where I interviewed him. And they're calling that conversion therapy.
Wow.
And so
consider even a sermon that you might have heard in church to be conversion therapy, because that's how they can go out there and claim that all these people experience conversion therapy and then blame every problem in their life on having gone to therapy.
Yeah, remind me. Let's talk about the Berkeley report real quick. I want to show you some stuff and get your feedback on that. So the battle, here's some more therapy stuff, right? This is therapy.
Yeah, I don't
do you know Alan?
I did. Well, I didn't know him personally. He passed away right at the same time I was starting my journey as well, actually.
So I would assume Growth into Manhood, Resuming the Journey, that this is a testimonial. Or is this therapy?
It's not a psychology book, but it is a guidebook for growing and healing in terms of like relating to other men and being part of the community of men. It's a really good book. I recommend it. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And then we got more Joseph Nicolosi books, Richard Cohen's. Okay, now here's another one where they're conflating.
True.
This is a great book. This talks about your desires and how Scripture is calling us to one thing, but our behaviors and desires are disordered, and how to align and understand, and how to go from, how to wash your mind with the Word, right? And this is Christian discipleship and Christian testimony.
Yeah.
And so this is religious persecution. This is what I say with Voice of the Voiceless. That's religious persecution. Now, Jeremy, I don't know if you know this. I don't think I've told you this yet. But this book by David Robinson, okay, you're going to get a kick out of this. So they did actually delete it, and then they brought it back.
Really?
Yep. So here it is.
Wow.
You want to know why?
Why is that?
Because David Robinson is on the Supreme Court bar. He's a lawyer. He's ex-gay. He's married. Or I shouldn't put a label on him.
Yeah.
He struggled with same-sex attraction. I don't know that he acted out on it. So I don't know that he ever acted out on it. I shouldn't say ex-gay, but he wrote this book, and they erased it, or they censored him and got rid of the book. But it's back now. Because he wrote them and said, you better put it back.
Yeah.
And so I talked to him personally.
Other things, because we've had senators, I think we had like 4 different senators that wrote to them as well, and they wouldn't even respond at first.
And well, when someone says, I'll take you to the Supreme Court, and see, this is a religious, this is a religious testimony. And he submitted his book to the Congress as evidence when he was fighting a conversion therapy ban previously. And so, this book is back because they don't want that to go to court.
Yeah.
But and Joe, what are they going to do? We're just little guys, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, we even, our group in Brazil is one of our larger groups, and our leader there, Alan, is amazing. He actually went and talked with the cabinet member of the president of Brazil, the new president of Brazil, our recent one, who's actually much more supportive on our side, and they even called Amazon on our behalf, trying to plead our case.
Oh, wow. The administration of the president of Brazil?
Yes. And Amazon wouldn't budge or talk to them even about it either. So,
yeah.
That for Amazon not to listen to the president of the Amazon is kind of crazy.
There's an irony.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got Australia, France. So France just banned it. France conversion therapy ban.
We have a few people in France as well. But
so yeah, and we'll talk offline about how to do underground church and how I can get you connected. So this just happened.
Yeah.
I saw Iceland is looking to do it. And of course you got the UK, right? UK.
They've been banning. They've had this for a long time with the UK. It's been
now they're seeking commentary.
Yeah.
And so that ends on Friday, which technically would be tomorrow.
Yep.
For us. So they're going to shut it down, taking comments on Thursday.
Wow.
And then if you look at, I should show you a video too. I mean, in the UK, this one is really interesting because you think
for adults as well.
COVID, you think, or not COVID, sorry, Canada. I think Canada was kind of covert in going after the religious side. I mean, they were trying to play both sides, but and giving religious freedom. But in the UK, the person is straight up ready to. Here, I'll play it for you. Just a second. Get your thoughts on this. Here. So this lady, this is a podcast that I ripped off the internet. So credit to somebody. But this woman is the head of the Ozanne Foundation, and she is a minister, and she's friends with the Pope, and she's gotten so much pressure on the Church of England and all this stuff. So she's in the LGBT. She in this podcast that they did, she was saying that there's 3 stages of conversion therapy, and she describes it as her being closeted because the church was telling her that it was a sin, and her stage 2 is asking God to help you change.
Okay.
And then stage 3, I can't remember exactly what stage 3 was, but she was going into it. Anyways, here the setup.
I remember those chapters in.
Yeah, I know, right? And so with this lady here, she's going to come out right and say it, and so I'll just let you watch this here.
Yeah.
So let me.
It looks so really serious problem, which the evangelical church and indeed parts of the Catholic Church have refused to engage with. And that is why we need the government to intervene. We have got an international definition on conversion therapy. I know you want to come on to those practicalities. What I'd say about where the government have made commitments, they've committed to banning religious practices. The letter from the Prime Minister to Peter was quite clear that appropriate pastoral care would be allowed. But appropriate is not causing harm. And that means that we want to willingly and embrace prayer that seeks to bring someone, I've always said this, allow someone to a point of peace, but does not try to change or suppress or cure who they are. That is inappropriate and causes harm. And that's where the debate has to focus.
Yeah. So what do you
find changes who they are, because to them it's like who I am is a different gender, or who I am is it's like, it's who they. I mean, they're defined. They've changed how they define that as well. So
Yeah. And what stuck out to me was her saying that, well, the prime minister is already committed to banning religious practice, but
Yeah.
not the kinds that, affirm LGBT.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if you're convicted that sodomy and lust after the same
Yeah.
sex is a sin, the pastor, and I've read her paper, and she says it. She has all the scenarios listed out, and she goes, you can preach from the pulpit that homosexuality or sodomy is a sin. But if someone is convicted and they come to you for prayer, you cannot pray that their behaviors and identity would come in alignment. Of course, she didn't use that language, but
even if they ask you to.
yeah. The client, the member of the church cannot seek to bring their sexuality into alignment with Christianity, with traditional Christianity. That she's just saying it straight up. I'm like, out of the whole podcast, that was the 1 minute clip that really takes the cake. That is the smoking gun.
I think that's pretty eye opening here. I think it's indicative of this struggle to begin with, because the people that are trying to ban us, for one thing, they don't know what we do. The second thing is, once they pass bans that they think are going to help by taking away any professional counselor's ability to help someone, they realize, okay, that hasn't, that doesn't cause the whole world to change in their favor or to make everything perfect in their lives. So they have to go out and ban something else. So it's like it's a never ending cycle. I mean, originally I remember listening and they said that they were never going to push for gay marriage. They were only pushing for civil unions, and that anybody who claimed that they were pushing for gay marriage was just trying to confuse the issue and turn people against them. And of course, immediately now they're saying, well, yeah, of course we want gay marriage, and we're not trying to force churches to, perform gay marriages. But then, the next step is, okay, let's shut down all the churches that aren't performing gay marriages. So it's like, I mean, they're not going to stop. I mean, it's a never ending cycle. And I think people are going to hate me for saying this, but I think it's a mental disorder. I mean, not just in terms of, the SSA being a disorder, but I think the activists themselves are carrying out their own emotional wounds that have nothing to do with
when people talk about Trump derangement syndrome or something, right? Like, there's
they have SSA. I mean, they have ex-gay derangement syndrome, I guess. I mean, we can't even exist without it, keeping them,
And here you've got the LGBT lobby saying, okay, now open up the government's page.
Yeah.
And then here, open up our page and then, give up this information. And so in this report, this is what all the talking points and all this kind of stuff. So they're even targeting talking conversion therapy.
Yeah.
And they're labeling, if Voice of the Voiceless were to have a conference to talk about freedom of conscience and having the right to follow your faith, they would label that as conversion therapy. Like,
of course,
my board member, advisory council member, Susan up in Canada, like, she can't now be praying with people. Yeah. She can't be doing street ministry. She's a former transgender and part of Voice of the Voiceless.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned that, I just got to point this out, Jeremy. Did you see it? I don't know that you've seen this yet. So changemovement.com or changemovement.com. All right. Well, change movement. Okay. What did I get wrong? Changed movement. Oh, it's the D. Sorry. It's past tense. Change movement. So we've got the change movement, right? Mm-hmm. And the change movement was birthed when Ken and Elizabeth, and we all went to AB 2943 in California because they were going to ban conversion therapy, but not just ban the talk of it. They're going to make it criminal under consumer fraud, like the Jonah case in New Jersey happened. And so we showed up and we all were wearing change shirts and we had a changed book.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Yep. And so we're talking about changing Christ, right? Like, here's all of us, right? Jim Doman, this is Ken Elizabeth, and here's me.
Yes.
That's me. Yeah. And so, we exist, and it was absolutely crazy. There's like 50 of us that went to the hearing, and so we fill up a couple rows in the judicial committee room, right? And Evan Lowe, who's the head of the LGBT, he's the assemblyman who wrote the bill. He goes up there and testifies and says there's no such thing as ex-gay people, that, you know, trying to be ex-gay will get you suicide and depression and stuff. And we're not allowed to say anything. So he literally gets to deny the existence of people in the room.
Yep.
And he doesn't get to be called out. We were told that we get kicked out if we even made a noise or raised our hand. So we said to sit there quietly. And of course, Ken and Elizabeth are giving testimony there. So you've got him ignoring us, and then you know, the media. I mean, it's crazy to be part of this and to see how it plays out in media. So media, you know, it's all pro LGBT narrative, and you know, he said, oh well, we worked with the Christians and we worked with the people of faith and we worked across the lines. No, they didn't. No. So watch this. Here's the change movement, right? Now watch this.
Oh gosh,
you're not going to believe this. They literally copied the change.
Wow.
Movement. Look at this. Look at the font. The unchanged movement.
Wow.
God loves us unchanged. And so it's a bunch of individuals giving their testimony how, you know, their pretend Christianity is more authentic than ours. And so their book looks exactly the same. They copied our black book. Yep.
Wow.
They copied it because Satan can't come up with anything new.
I know.
You know?
Well, it's funny because I think that weird Netflix series Tiger King, there's this whole lawsuit in the middle of it because he copies her website or something, and she wins like a huge settlement against him for copying her logo and websites. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's in the spirit of it, and of course, this is Q Christian Fellowship, right? And yeah, so they copied our book, they copied everything. But what was interesting was more people showed up to be against that bill than apparently has ever happened. There was over an hour of no testimonies. And the testimony is just, this is my name and I'm against this bill. That's it. 2 hours of that, or an hour, something like that.
I'm surprised they allow that, because a lot of times in the state legislative hearings, they'll just cut it off altogether. And you know, I've seen people that have driven down for, you know, across the state here. It could be an 8-hour drive, and
they did
postpone the hearing for 18 hours, and then at midnight they'll say, "Oh, we're not going to hear testimony after all."
That is a tactic that they do. Well, in California, they couldn't pass it, and so the next year they came up with ACR 99. So it's not a bill; it's a resolution.
Yeah.
And so this one actually passed.
Yeah.
And so if you read it, and I don't want to bore you, but I mean,
no, that's okay.
It's kind of interesting. Is that they call on counselors, pastors, religious leaders, workers, educators, legislators with moral influence, especially its churches, universities, colleges, and other schools, counseling centers, activist groups, religious centers, to model equitable treatment of all people. And so all of the other thing, they're saying that conversion therapy and religious practice is harmful. So the state is saying what they believe to be true. So that's the state's official position.
Yeah.
But they're not passing any law.
Yeah.
And so 2018 they couldn't get the bill passed. But now watch this. I just want to show you this and get your thoughts on this.
The gang, formerly known as A-Train, continues to maintain his innocence despite some.
Sorry, advertisements.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is okay. Let me set this up.
You made a video like this actually originally, similar to that a while back.
Yeah. This is my video. I'll admit I'm the one that made it. Yeah. So the setup is Sam Brinton is the spokesperson for the LGBT lobby.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire conversion therapy ban concept fell on his shoulder. They lifted him up and put it all on him.
I know, yeah.
Right. And then other people have come along, and what have you. Yeah. But Sam Brinton in 2014 has a talk at Google.
Yep.
Okay. And the name of the talk, you can go to Google, you can find this. It's Ex-Gay Ministries. And so in the context of ex-gay ministries, Sam is presenting conversion therapy bans.
Yeah.
Okay. So they titled it ex-gay ministry. They didn't title it, conversion therapy therapists are going crazy or anything.
Yeah.
They called it ex-gay ministries.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Sam, he was a missionary's kid.
Mhm.
And so he's now the spokesperson.
Yeah.
So you watch the whole thing. And here's a crazy thing is that, do you know the Ruth Institute?
Yes. Yeah.
So the Ruth Institute did a video and brought in a national expert on integrity, like, to be able to test if somebody's lying or telling the truth, whatever they call that. And she ended up analyzing Sam Brinton.
Oh yeah.
And this I didn't have anything to do with that. I was like, that was just gold coming to, and that was like last month, I think.
Yeah.
And anyways, so she had analyzed this video and because Sam Brinton is all out there.
Oh, I know.
And she said that, the grins that he gives and the way that he talks and tells the stories and the language that he's using is deception. It's all deception. And he's not the spokesperson anymore. They've moved on.
And they moved on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I actually put a video together where he says one thing and then an earlier video where he says the polar opposite. Like where one thing he says, I was in therapy for 8 years. And the next video from not too long before that, he goes, well, I never actually went to a therapist.
Oh yeah. So for the viewers, that's probably on Sam Brinton Exposed.
Yes.
Right? Sam Brinton Exposed.
Yeah.
But I want to share this video with you and the audience here so that we can see what's going on. So this is after the Q&A. Okay. So this is the Q&A part.
So also not a lawyer, but the California law, the way I was reading it, said something specific about mental health professionals.
Yes.
So does that wording make it limiting, or is that kind of, do you wish that would be more broad?
This is why I should just have Sam up here. So the first space that I'll enter with is, yes, it is limiting. That is partially how you get some of these bills through, is by limiting it to licensed mental health professionals and taking away and making that addressed. You can't take a license away from someone who doesn't have a license. Religious organizations will probably practice this for the rest of time, unless I can figure out a way to stop it. Like, this is something that I may not be able to find every little camp, right? I may not be able to find every pastor, but I can make it something that culturally is unacceptable. I can make it something that culturally is unacceptable. But that's a space that as I see it, is that yes, it's directly addressing mental health professionals, but it's also by proxy affecting everyone else because it's getting that reporting in. So, is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
What are your thoughts initially when you see that?
Well, yeah, I mean, not surprised. That's been their strategy all along. It's if they can pass a bill banning professionals from doing it, even in areas where there aren't any professionals that are doing it. Yeah, in certain states where there's certain areas where there aren't any, but they can still get the headlines and say, okay, this has been banned. It's a dangerous practice. It's like, really, what is it that was a dangerous practice to begin with? Can you elaborate on that? And sometimes they'll go into like, oh, you're torturing people or electrocuting them. It's like, we've never done anything like that. That's already illegal. You don't need a separate law about that. And they, so they're trying to sway the culture, to sway the church, really. I mean, they've tried to really convince the church that Christianity was wrong all along about this issue and that they need to backtrack or apologize or water it down or something like that. And from my experience, having come at this from the other direction, having lived that life first for several years and then realizing that life didn't work, I came back to Christianity because I realized that the church was right, that it was true, that the reason God's word forbids homosexual behavior is because it's harmful to us, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. It is, his word is solid through and through. And I think that was what became more and more evident to me, even when I was trying to deny that during all those times. I think there's a blog post or an email I wrote about 10 or 11 years ago where I was comparing my very last gay relationship that had lasted a few years and had ended that point, I compared that to the way love is described in 1 Corinthians 13. And, he specifically goes into love is patient, kind, it's not jealous, not envious. I said, everything I did, everything I thought was love for 10 years was a polar opposite of every one of these points. And that's what drove that whole life, those relationships. I mean, every gay relationship I ever went into, it started out where we both thought each other was perfect and everything was, right with the world. And because we weren't really seeing each other, it was an illusion, it was a projection. And I was projecting my own envy and everything that I thought was lacking in myself onto this other person, vice versa. And the more we got to know each other and realized we're humans, and the more, the whole relationship was based on not knowing each other. Really. The more we actually knew about each other, the less of a connection there was. And I noticed that not just in my own relationships, but in everybody else I knew during the 10 or 11 years, is that same pattern of the same, I guess it's like a narcissistic attachment. I don't know exactly the right word for it, but scripture had the answers all along, and I just wasn't willing to see them because of my own biases there.
Wow. Yeah, that is the power of God to reveal the truth.
Yeah.
And to even be able to self-reflect, how did you get there? Like,
I think, I mean, I guess it was like basically hitting rock bottom of it, really, and being in that, state where I knew that I tried everything I could try and it wasn't working, and I had to finally look up to God and say, please, show me the way. So
that's awesome. And, even sharing that testimony and us talking about God revealing himself to us and saying that God can change us and that we should even search for change in Christ. And in my outside of Voice of the Voiceless is defending the faith and exposing the work of the enemy. But in my other ministry that I'm part of, like Joel 2:25, which is ministry to the individual, there's a whole bunch of scriptural truth that speaks to transformation, that speaks to sanctification and washing of the mind, having new desires in our hearts. And what the LGBT lobby does or desires, and what these conversion therapy bans do, is it silences our religious speech.
Exactly.
And, when I was giving testimony in Minnesota, you talk about them passing these things in places where it's not even happening. Like in Minnesota, I went to the actual Minnesota licensing board and I said, is there any evidence of conversion therapy? I did this in 2018 in Minnesota. And they said that there's no evidence and nobody has ever been disciplined for doing conversion therapy in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I called Child Protection Services. I said, is there any data that children are being coerced or abused in the name of conversion therapy, sexual orientation change, any of this stuff? And conversion and CPS told me there's no data that would show that that's happening in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And ironically, the representative at the time in 2018 that introduced it was my representative from my district, right? And so I go to a town hall and I talked to her afterwards. I said, well, who do you know that's been harmed by this? And she goes, well, I don't know anybody personally.
Yeah.
But we need to do this so that nobody gets harmed. I said, oh, okay, just checking. She knows that it's not happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when they can't pass it by the state, what do? What's the next thing what have you seen?
Well, I've seen them where they've even tried to pass it in city councils. Like
yes,
Washington.
Exactly.
I mean, the first one they did was Washington, D.C., which of course was, obviously an easy pass there because it's so far to the left. But there were no therapists operating in that, was it 5 square miles? I forget how big. Well, it's maybe a little bit bigger than that. But the District of Columbia, their jurisdiction, there was no therapist operating in that jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But they wanted a national headline that said that they had to pass the law banning this, and that's what they got. So then, of course, they used that leverage for other places in other states. So.
Yeah, and that's what we saw as Voice of the Voiceless watching, the LGBT lobby, if you will.
Yeah.
How their strategy changed was they kind of couldn't fight the states because they had gotten through the blue states, and the purple states weren't going to go, and there's no way a red state's going to go.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've made headway. I mean, red states, there's a risk there because so many people are so misinformed.
Yes. Well, okay.
Pretty far, even here in Texas.
There's a time frame that
Yeah.
I'm talking, and we'll get to the present state, but
Yeah.
up to last year,
Yeah.
it was pretty straightforward. But they actually, believe it or not, the LGBT lobby in Minnesota went to Robbinsdale, which is where we have our ministry, and got the city to ban conversion therapy there. There's no therapists in the city, but they wanted us to know that they know that we're here, right?
Wow.
And what was really bad, I don't know if you knew this, in New York City.
Yeah.
New York City had a ban, and then a rabbi sued them.
I remember that. Yeah.
And they what do they call it?
They rescinded it, I think.
They rescinded it.
I knew it wasn't going to pass the courts.
And no, they exactly. And I think it was Sam who is quoted, we pulled back on this because it could do a lot of damage to our cause. Well, what they're admitting is that it's unconstitutional. They know it, but they'll push it wherever they can.
Yep.
And, down in Florida, in Tampa, who was it that had a practice there? It wasn't David Pickup. It was that lady and I'm so bad. They're friends. I should know their names.
I thought there was Enrique Roman had one, didn't he?
Yeah. So one of our friends, one of the therapists, had a practice in Tampa, and that went to the federal district court there, and that got overturned and says you can't do that.
Yeah.
Because
Even with the therapist, it's not a ban on a particular practice. It's a ban on free speech. That's really all it is.
Because it is.
There isn't a separate practice. They said, okay, there's a particular modality that we think is harmful and we want to ban it. Well, chances are if it's harmful, it's already been banned. But they want to target beliefs, and that's what these bans are about. It's really about the belief and being able to speak about this topic in a way that is different from what they believe. And that's what they want to be illegal. You cannot think something different from what they believe.
Yeah. And part of their narrative, tell me if I'm wrong, but what the overarching conversion therapy is that the therapists are out there trying to convert people.
Yeah.
And they're not out there. I'm sorry. They're simply not out there.
Against their will too.
Against their will, doing coercion and shame tactics and the stuff.
Yeah. That's illegal anyway. So.
What they're also banning is the client's goals.
Yeah.
And so if you're married and you are addicted to straight porn, and then it doesn't do anything for you, and you start dabbling with gay porn, and all of a sudden you take on, porn induced homosexuality. That is quite a term. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you start to get in and then you start, I think I'm going to start hooking up with guys, and you want to go to a therapist and say, look, I know this is wrong. I want to save my marriage. Well, conversion therapy bans would say, well, as a therapist, you have to affirm his homosexuality. You can't, he doesn't get to choose to address that issue. He doesn't get to look at why he's addicted. And, and the language does say anything that would change the sexual orientation is off limits.
Yeah.
And
I think
that's,
the bans also try to address even on the whole gender confusion issue as well. So like if a teenager says, they feel like an opposite gender, the therapist has to tell them, no, you're born to be the opposite gender. You need to start taking hormones and you need to, have surgery. And it's like they're almost, in some places, they're really forcing that and pushing it.
Yeah, no, at the Supreme Court level, the NIFLA case. Are you familiar with the NIFLA case?
Briefly, yeah.
That came out of California, and California was trying to force pro-life centers to advertise abortion.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because they were saying that it's medical procedure and that's medical speech, and therefore the state can regulate it and force these people to carry medical procedures, right? And so if pro-life centers are talking in the medical space, then they come under the purview of the state. Yeah. Well, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't carve out speech and call it professional and then legislate it. You can't do that. You can't force somebody to carry something because you say that it's professional.
Yeah, and we're actually fortunate that we have a Supreme Court that would look at the Constitution, or at least a few people in the Supreme Court that are saying in Europe, I've seen cases in Europe where midwives were being forced to perform abortions, and midwife said, "Look, I'll do everything else. I just don't want to be involved in that." And there's one midwife I think that sued and went all the way up to the court, and they decided against her, and she was fired. They said, you can't refuse that. That's a medical practice. So,
Wow.
like she was refusing to help somebody who was dying and needed her help to. She refused to participate in that act. And, I think we've seen the same thing with different cases where they've tried to shut down hospitals that don't want to participate in transgender operations. And of course, the headline says, that they want to deny medical care to LGBT people. And it's like, well, that's not what they're saying.
like they're going to deny strep throat cultures,
of course,
and
or that
broken arms and all that kind of treatment.
Or if you're having a heart attack, that they won't treat you because of your.
Yeah, that's how it comes off to the average person. When the average
that's
person
what they wanted
that headline.
That's how they get it. They want that headline to come across that way, because that's the only way people would feel emotionally, charged, against that hospital. So.
Yeah. And so the NIFLA case, they also, in that finding, and however they write their opinion, right, they threw a bone to us. They actually referenced David Pickup v. Brown back in 2012 when California passed the conversion therapy bans for minors, and David Pickup sued the state, Governor Brown.
Yep.
And so the Supreme Court in the NIFLA case said, look, California Supreme Court, you got it wrong, that you carved out professional speech under the guise of conversion therapy and said that therapists can't talk to children about this. But that is also unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So
Thomas wrote that part. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you've read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, the LGBT lobby knows that this is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
But they don't care.
Yeah.
And the Democrats know that it's unconstitutional. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care about our Constitution.
Yeah.
They don't care about our inalienable rights.
Yeah.
They're a bunch of little commies. All right. Sorry.
Well, no, I think it's also that either they believe their own lies, or that, because if they looked at the truth, what we're actually saying isn't, what they're mad about is that we exist and that we're taking a different path than them. They're not really mad that they don't really think that we're torturing people or doing anything really harmful, but to them it's so offensive that we exist, and that to them is harmful. So.
Yeah, and
lies,
and they have to bring the culture along with their lie that we're harmful. And I'd like to
winning with that, unfortunately.
No, I know, right? They got $500 million. What does Voice of Voiceless have? What is Restored Hope? What is Change Movement?
They have more than
we got the church working. They've got Press and Sprinkle going to our churches for crying out loud, telling everybody that
they've got half the churches against us already.
Yeah, well, and the churches splitting denominations, affirming LGBT. The Baptists are next, the Assemblies of God. Who knows? But I wanted to go back to, like, how are they making it seem like we're in the minority and that we're just that they've got all of this. And one thing I wanted to show you that I haven't gone public with, but this is the first thing of doing that. So I'm going to share here. Have you heard of the Williams Institute School of Law at UCLA?
Briefly, yeah.
Okay, so this is the 700,000 people have gone through conversion therapy. You've heard that statistic, right? You've heard that. So they came out with a report in 2018.
Yeah.
And actually it was like December 2018. So it was January when it hit the news. And I watched it happen in real time. So the New York, I can't remember if it was the New York Post or I think it was the New York Times. Yeah. So the Williams Institute releases the report. The New York Times releases an article.
Yep.
And Sam Brinton, within 30 minutes of the article being published about the research, he has this whole big long opinion piece about the report. So and so New York, I think it's New York Times or New York Post. It's one or the other. They came out with this article. Actually, I should just Google it so I don't slander the wrong person.
Or slander.
Let's see. Williams Institute Sam Brinton, New York Times. So let's see. Yes. Here it is. So it's New York Times. So this article came out, oh, it was 2018, January 2018. Oh, wow. Time flies when you're having ministry time, right? So he's quoting the Williams Institute, right? And so I looked at the timestamps of all this, and it's all within 30 minutes and 2 hours and 24 hours. So to me, that's a concerted effort of everybody working together to get it all out, right?
Sure.
And so
you gotta get their lies straight if they're gonna.
Yeah, exactly. And so Sam Brinton so it is the New York Times. Sorry, New York Post. I meant New York Times. So the New York Post, publishes his torture story, which, I told you that the Ruth Institute has published the debunking of that. And anyways, so this is where the 700,000 number came from, right? 698,000 LGBT adults. 350 received it as adolescents. So
how are they even defining conversion therapy to get those kind of numbers?
I know, right? Well, that's where you got to go to the report. So in 2018, I'm like, oh my goodness, research has come out. Like, I'm on the wrong side. Like 700,000 people have gone through this. Like, clearly, President of Voice of the Voiceless, I have missed the boat, and I've got this all wrong. And I was like,
I remember when they came out with this too. I remember laughing, just thinking like, what the hell are they talking about?
Well, I'll tell you what, this is, UCLA, the School of Law. So I'm like, clearly I've missed something, because somebody as big as, UCLA is coming out with this. Well, I've since learned that this is the LGBT propaganda arm, and
well, it's the same with the APA. They have a propaganda arm of 7 people that issues all of their official statements on this issue. And
is that Division 44?
It's their task force, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll get to that, because I want to show you this first, and then we'll circle back to the APA. So I'm reading this, and this has been the de facto article that has been used since it came out. Like, everybody quotes this number now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, 20,000 youth have gone through conversion therapy. It's crazy. So notice all these little footnotes, right? All these footnotes. And what we'll do here is let me download this real quick. Okay. Let me go like this. Hold on a second. I just want to get this. All right. I just need to get my screen opened again here with System Viewer. So 2 seconds. Sorry. Technical things here. All right. So let me get into this app so we can do some searching here. This is what I went through. Okay. So let's go back to this. So here it is. Here's the Williams Institute report. Now we got to go look at the footnotes, right? So we got to go down here. Okay. Now watch this. This is just crazy. This is the key word, unpublished. Okay. Mm-hmm. So their statistics, they talk about how they came up with it. And they say ages 26, to 33 and 42 and 51. Williams Institute unpublished analysis. Mm-hmm. And so if we look for the word unpublished, we're going to see it dozens of times here.
Yeah.
So the proportion when multiplied by the proportion in the Gallup study. And so their numbers are guesses based on estimates based on their unpublished analysis.
Yeah.
So all these numbers, they'll quote all these things, but how they arrive at this is all unpublished. They're not actually sharing Williams' unpublished analysis. Here,
it's completely
20,000 youth. It's based on unpublished analysis.
Yeah.
Williams' unpublished analysis. And so this whole thing is based on their unpublished data.
Yeah.
But yet this is the,
data. It's just a guesstimate based on a bizarre extrapolation that they're making. So,
yeah, it is. It's
they made
based
the
on,
definition so broad.
well,
that,
we think that there's this many people in the community.
Yeah.
And so if this percentage of over here that says this, and we extrapolate it to say this estimate of people over here, that's 700,000. And it's horrible, horrible research. But guess what? Nobody cares.
It's science. You can't question that.
Yeah, no, exactly. It comes down to who is your source of authority, and who do you delegate authority to?
We can't question the experts, man.
I know. And so, when people say, this whole COVID thing, well, how can you say the experts are wrong? I'm like, because I've spent years looking at what people call experts and the lies that they do for their agenda.
I know.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist when I can see it with my own two eyes. Don't gaslight me with these experts, right?
Well, especially when the experts themselves admit that they don't know what they're talking about, which is what they're saying there. And the APA in their own, which we go to their task force is made up of 7 people total. 6 of them are openly gay, long-term political activists, like Sam Britton, basically, but psychologists. And another one I think is like a swinger or something, but just all 7 of them have absolutely the worst backgrounds possible to be talking about the subject, and none of them have ever studied the subject. I mean, they admit
they're not neutral.
No, not at all. And they admit that they didn't talk to anybody who was experienced with this therapy. They didn't talk to anybody who's actually practiced this therapy. They didn't want any input from them at all, and they said that up front. And then they come out with these reports saying that it could be harmful. And then in the footnotes, they say, well, we've never actually found any evidence of anybody being harmed. But,
yes. Yeah. No, that's you're talking the 2009 task force, right?
Yeah.
The task force paper?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they admit that they didn't find any harm. And the other thing is, like, some of the people from the therapeutic choice group that are licensed therapists that, would understand how to lead people out of homosexuality, they weren't allowed to be on the task force.
Yeah,
they were explicitly excluded in being part of the APA. They were part of the APA, but they were not included intentionally.
Sure.
And, I just wanted to point out that APA has Division 44, which is sexual orientation and gender diversity. And this is more or less the gatekeepers of what science and research is appropriate. And so any of the science or research that would come out on our side, that would show that sexuality can change or fluid, they wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, and talk about that. I want to show you this one too. LD. So this is another montage that I put together. It's only a minute 30. Yeah. So Lisa Diamond, I believe, was on the task force, was she not? Or she was a publishing editor or something. I have to go look again. I can't remember if she was on this task force or a different one, but she herself identifies as being a lesbian. Okay. And so she gave this presentation about sexual orientation and fluidity.
Yeah.
And she shows that her research shows that people come and go out of homosexuality, that sexual orientation is fluid. And her research was actually used by the conservative side at the gay marriage Supreme Court hearing.
Yeah.
And the LGBT, and she talks about this in this presentation that the screenshot of this video is from. And she says that the LGBT lobby came to her and said, look, the enemy, is using your research against us. You've got to come in and say, that they're wrong. And she goes, well, they're not wrong. They got it all right. I don't agree in how they're using it, but they're not misrepresenting my research.
Sure.
She says that. I mean, talk about smoking guns, but so let's just listen. It's only a minute and a half.
Is a general feature of human sexuality. Although it's perfectly fine for researchers to be like, wow, sexuality is fluid and those categories don't have any meaning. The truth is that at a political level, we have advocated for the civil rights of LGBT people on the basis of them being LGBT, right? We've used categories as a part of our strategy for social policy and for acceptance. And that is really, really tricky now that we know that it's not true. Like as a community,
Wow.
you know.
Yeah, you heard that. She said it's really tricky because now we know that that's not true. They're not actually born gay, and you can change. And even Sam Brinton, he started out his testimony as being gay, and now he's bisexual.
Really?
So yeah. So where did that same?
Because I mean,
No, it was
now
a
he's
couple years ago.
Okay, because recently he's gone into like.
Well, yeah, now he's non-binary and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But now he self-describes as bisexual.
Really?
So he started out as a gay man. Now he's bisexual.
Okay.
So the spokesperson of the Born Perfect campaign has experienced change. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, seriously. But anyways, so we'll keep going here.
The queers have to stop saying, please help us. We're born this way and we can't change, as an argument for legal standing. I don't think we need that argument, and that argument is going to bite us in the ass, because now we know that there's enough data out there that the other side is aware of as much as we are aware of. True or false? Sexual orientation is something you're born with. So for years, the born that way argument has been used to promote LGBT equality. But there are 3 problems with the born that way argument. First, it's not scientifically accurate.
Wow.
Second, it's not legally necessary. But third, and most important, it's actually unjust. And it's time to retire that argument for LGBT equality.
So it's like you have a tension between the cis gays and the trans gays, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what her motivation. I mean, the TED Talk, she does talk how you're not born gay and you can change, but I snipped out just the hot comments. But I don't know what her motivation is other than intellectual integrity.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that she's admitting some of that. But
yeah, I don't know. In reading her stuff, I don't understand where she thinks LGBT rights come from. Then, she doesn't propose anything else. But
well, I think these days they're pretty much going with rights are from whatever we want it to be. So, I mean, because people have to be born a female to have the right to use the women's restroom. I mean, nowadays, yeah.
Well, Jeremy, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Yes,
thank you for participating. It's been an hour, and so we're going to wrap it up.
Okay, yeah.
And just any last thoughts that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I really appreciate this time. I really appreciate everybody that's viewing us, and I think that this is an ongoing battle. I think when people say that we're on the wrong side of history, they forget that history is a lot longer than just our generation or just this one time period. And if you look back, the last several thousand years, there have been lots of periods of time of either persecution or even just of society's views on this particular issue. I mean, you see different time periods when societies in the past embraced that and then realized it was a bad idea. So it's not really this isn't the first time it's ever been discussed. And I think, that it's hard to put things in perspective, but I think there's a lot to put into perspective, because I mean, the other side of the pendulum could be worse too if they push it too far. So and we have to be mindful of that as well. So
can I ask you a closing question?
Sure.
For the context is Christian church or Christian pastors, and they've got the conversion therapy ban sitting in front of them, LGBT family members or lots of LGBT individuals in their church, and they want to be honoring of scripture and hopeful for the individual. What would you tell them?
Well, I would encourage them to fight back and to speak up about this. At the same time, realize that the people that are in their church, whether they're confused about their, the labels or not, those people aren't the enemy. So it's important not to treat them that way and acknowledge and treat, and be, well, I mean, really our enemy isn't flesh and blood anyway. So we have to see that. But, so we have to be mindful of that as well. And I think that's an area that can be really confusing, because especially I'm coming from an SSA background myself. I know that some of us can be very sensitive, and of course we see that with the other side, how extreme they're going. But it's very easy for people to take it personally when you rant and rave against LGBT or whatever that way. So we have to see that this is part of the overall struggle, and not the people involved aren't the enemy themselves.
And then
of the enemy, basically.
Thank you. I want to ask you one more question to get your. So you've got the LGBT activists in front of you as a Christian, and you had an opportunity, to explain what you do in ministry, and try to explain the conversion therapy. What's the next thing that you do with that individual? Where would you go with that?
Well, I would try to see where the individual was in terms of their own understanding of it, and in terms of where they are in their own life, and understand. I mean, it's important to us to understand where they're coming from. If they're coming from a background where they've never heard any of this before, and never heard, or never really heard the gospel, try to focus on that first. Or if they're coming from a perspective where they, maybe been wounded in the church or felt like they were rejected by the church, I'd try to address that and understand where they're coming from there. And I think it's important to listen as well, to ask a lot of questions about, because each person's kind of coming from a different perspective sometimes, and it's easy to trigger the wrong response if we don't really listen to what they're trying to say. So, amen.
And that is the approach that I endorse. Of course, Jeremy, you've been one of my mentors, so that's great. Well, God bless you. Thank you for being here tonight, and God have a great night. See ya.
You too. Thank you.
All right. And then before I go, I just wanted to share Voice of the Voiceless with you and let you know that what we're doing here is defending the rights of former homosexuals, individuals with unwanted same-sex attraction, and their families, and that we do support the faith-based community and work actively here in the United States and honestly internationally for our rights to share our rights and our testimonies, or to share our views on homosexuality in the public forum. So please do visit our website. When we go live, we'll be live here. And you can watch our videos. Also, please subscribe. And this is, I'm full-time doing this. And so I do need financial support. So if you could, please support Voice of the Voiceless. And presently we do Bing searches and Amazon Smile. So if you want to support that, and even though the LGBT lobby is trying to get Amazon to shut us down, Facebook giving, got my check right here. Oh, you can't see it. Giving Tuesday, our fundraiser, I just got my check from Facebook. Thank you, Facebook, for not erasing me. But you can also give directly to us, which presently is not through PayPal anymore. So give to Voice of the Voiceless so that we can continue equipping the church in understanding this and exposing the work of the enemy and fighting for our rights. The letter that I did write to the UN that got me the erasure letter from Media Matters, George Soros, is right here. That's major link number 3. We did do a report to the FTC about the lies of the LGBT lobby. It's quite a few pages, so check that out. And we also have the APA, the deception at the APA. A lot of work has gone into this. It's very well thought out, and we have all the attachments to go along with it, so that you can make a decision for yourself. And of course, the Amazon censorship. And then I'd like to share, we've been really talking heavy about conversion therapy. So I would be remiss to not mention therapyequality.org. This has fact sheets about what happens when therapy is banned. It has letters to your legislator on the fact sheet, to your legislator fact sheets. And it's got all the footnotes. Dr. Laura Haynes has put this together. It's great work. And so I'd recommend that. And then if you are struggling yourself or your family, someone in your family is, or your children are, reach out to me. And I've got a whole network of friends in ministry that work, and I can help find somebody in your area. You can go to Restored Hope Network, Restored Hope Network here in Colorado Springs. There's a whole network of churches, or ministries rather, that let's see, where is it? Find help. Yep. So Anne has a great ministry here, keeping track of all the ministries throughout the country, and I totally encourage you to go there. And then also I know more that outside of that. So thank you for your time, and stay tuned. I sign up to our newsletter so that I can keep it in touch with you, because eventually my Facebook page and YouTube's will be shut down. So sign up for our email here, and I look forward to working with you and equipping you in this area for truth. So God bless, and have a great night.